Brodes Media.
That's one way to wake up. Are you kidding me? One of my buddies hit me up in our fantasy football league and sent me a request for a trade at 4 a.m., which woke me up. And then I'm like, what the hell? Let me just see if anything happened on social media. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Here's a Woj bomb. Are you serious? We're shipping Harden out of town, and I'm thrilled. I'm pumped. I actually like the return that Daryl Morey got, and we will pick this thing apart. But due to the circumstances, thought he did a pretty damn good job. The biggest takeaways for me with this trade is no James Harden being around this team and bringing in all the drama. And is he going to show up? Is he not going to show up? Will he ever play? Will he not play? What is Nick Nurse doing with plan A compared to plan B? Tyrese Maxey's growing into a star. And I think what we saw over the first 3 games have given the Sixers this different outlook and different perspective. This dude's something else, and he has an unbelievable skill set. Let's continue to let him be him. Let's continue to put him in a position where he's the guy as the guard. He's the guy, and you see what happens. He barely turns the rock over. He's picking up a good amount of assists, and he can score at will too. Let's see what he could become. Now, this isn't a finished product just because you moved on from Harden. I don't believe that anybody in that organization looks at the current roster and the current mold of some of the veterans they brought in. Robert Covington. He's not the same Robert Covington that maybe some Sixers fans are hoping that he is when he left town. And I always thought he was a little overrated, but that's not neither here nor there right now. Robert Covington, Martin, Batum, Morris. Depth, some wing size. Okay, flyers, if you want to label them flyers, see if any of them stick. They're all on the back end of whatever they have left. Batum is ready to rock his 1,000th game in the NBA. There's not a lot to them, but can they be serviceable minute eaters? Yeah, I think that there's something to that. It'll be interesting to see what Kelly Oubre's role becomes. Do you ask him to do more, or do you like him being that threat as a rotational off-the-bench piece to lengthen out what your rotation is? It's all fascinating, and I trust Nick Nurse because you could see the handprints that he has on this offense and on this defense and on this unit, which has been a blast to watch through the first 3 games. It's funny, a lot of us in this city went with the narrative that it's going to take a lot for us to get sucked back into Sixers basketball. It's October 31st, and we are already all the way back in, ready for them to flirt around with our emotions. But that's what Tyrese Maxey can do when he flourishes. It is all because of what Maxey is doing with the basketball. Because without that, it's all right, same old Sixers. Embiid's Embiid, and Embiid is an MVP like we already kind of know. We don't know what this role of Tyrese Maxey is going to look like. And moving on from P.J. Tucker, so I started talking about Harden being out. That's number one. Moving P.J. Tucker is massive, and even getting 2 first-round picks I thought was very important. So those were the key areas for me that I really studied with the return, more so than a Robert Covington or a Batum or anybody else like that. It was those 3 parts to this. P.J. was a problem offensively. You were playing 5-on-4 with a man standing in the corner, not being a threat, and other teams willing to dare him to shoot the ball. I love his aggressiveness, and I think he does bring an element to this team in the postseason that relates to winning basketball. He does the hard-nosed, tough stuff, and you miss out on that, even though Patrick Beverley's on this roster, and he does something similar, and you can say maybe some of these guys could be scrappy that you brought in with this trade, but P.J. Tucker did it to a level that is extremely respected for a reason, and you miss out on that. But if you look at what's going to change when the games get more important, and if Maxey is becoming a baller, all right, and if you have someone out on the floor, excuse me, that becomes irrelevant and can't do anything outside the perimeter, and guys don't have to respect his shooting, well, it's going to make it that much more tougher for everybody else and that much more difficult for a Tyrese Maxey, because you could put a lot more emphasis on stopping Embiid and Maxey because, well, that guy isn't a threat. That guy's not going to beat you. And if he does, fine. In a 7-game series, I'll take my chances that if we continue to let PJ Tucker shoot wide open looks as he's playing a ton of minutes, we'll win more times than not. Maybe one game PJ Tucker hits 4 or 5 and it hurts you. Other than that, he's a stiff and he's barely even willing to shoot the ball at all. So, I think of it from that level, X and O strategy offensively. It can really help Maxey when you remove him from the situation. Ben hurt you, same thing. PJ Tucker hurts you, same thing. And you get that contract off the books. I don't know where they go from here. Obviously, the relationship between Nick Nurse and Toronto have people wondering, is there something they can do? Can Daryl Morey make a trade? Morey isn't satisfied yet. This was step 1 in a multi-step process. There's still a lot to do. When looking at the Eastern Conference and a championship window, I don't think anybody's staring at this team internally thinking that they have the same exact power as the Boston Celtics, and they have the same exact power as some of these other teams, but they are reasonably close. They're not extremely far. Having Maxey and Embiid put you in the conversation, and now you need to help and improve elsewhere. Yes, there's a lot to be said about potentially what can happen in free agency and what has coming off the books, and you can pounce and really rejuvenate what this roster could look like in an off-season move. And it's hard to throw away this season and think about that right now because, well, I want to compete for a championship. I want to make a postseason run. I want to think about getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and finally seeing Joel Embiid get a chance to participate in that with an NBA Finals berth on the line. I want that. So that's more of a secondary thought, but it's a very important secondary thought that we just can't throw out because we're living in the right now. It gives you more flexibility in a lot of different scenarios, whether you're looking at making a move by the trade deadline, and there's some technicalities on when exactly you can trade some of the pieces that you just acquired and all that. But if you're looking to go get a Levine, that's another somewhat of a rumor that's being talked about, is can you go get Zach LaVine and this and that. I'm open to all of it. I'm willing to see what they do from here. I don't know what direction they go in. They might let this marinate and see what this does for a little bit of time, and it takes a while before teams start to move their pieces because they got to figure out who they are, and only being 3-4 games into the NBA season, teams aren't ready to blow it up yet, even though the Chicago Bulls had a players-only meeting after game 1 or 2, and they're shutting the locker room doors and trying to figure things out. Well, once that happens, you know what trend is going on, and yeah, they have to work together and see what can be done when you pick up the phone and Daryl Morey tries to call some GMs and president of basketball ops. It takes time for things to mold, and I know that Daryl Morey is on the prowl.